This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the AIPIS show for accredited income property investment specialists and those who aspire to be. If you're a real estate, mortgage, or financial professional, this is the place for you. We'll explore innovative investment analysis, sales, marketing, and income-generating strategies for the most historically proven wealth creator, income property. Learn from the experts as they show you how to build a better business and a better life.
Hey, it's my pleasure to welcome another client to the show, and everybody always loves these client case studies. This is Chad Hewitt, and he lives in the Seattle area. Actually, I think Everett, Washington, I believe, outside of Seattle. And Chad, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. So you own a construction scaffolding company, right?
Correct. Yeah, we put scaffold up, take it down, and it's kind of like having little short-term rental properties, because while the project's being built, we charge rental for the equipment. So it's kind of like having, little apartment buildings that we're renting all over Seattle, but I just own the scaffold.
That's cool. That's an interesting way to look at it. I like the way you look at that just like a real estate investor would. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you and your wife were interested in triple net leases on commercial property. And, I guess you were looking at like a common one is a drugstore, a Walgreens, and you were looking at that deal. And just for people who don't know, a lot of times investors will buy these triple net properties, and triple net simply means that all the expenses pass through to the tenant. So these are liked by some people because they're sort of considered the most sort of hands-off form of real estate investing, where you just make everything the tenant's responsibility. You own the property, of course, but the yields are pretty low on most of these. That people trade simplicity for low yield. And what I would think is that on the Walgreens CVS type model, because all of those are triple net lease type deals, and I didn't say this to you before when we were talking off air, Chad, but I think they're overbuilt. And I think Amazon is just going to pillage that business with they purchased a prescription company recently. And I think that's the next wave is Amazonization. I don't know. I didn't say it right. And I think that's really going to hurt these drugstores. And I think they're already pretty overbuilt. I mean, you go down any city in America and it's like you go a couple of main streets and you got a Walgreens on one corner, diagonally across, there's a CVS. Like, do we need this many drugstores? I don't think so. But tell us what got you interested in that and your story about getting in real estate. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I guess that inspired it, right? So I'll let you talk.
Yeah. I was inspired from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read that book when I was in my early 20s, and the light bulb went on about using leverage and other people's money and the type of gains the minimum gains you can expect versus what you can expect on Wall Street. And it just didn't make any sense to me to start pursuing a 401k or anything like that. So as I began to build my scaffolding company, the goal was as a cash flow vehicle to have money to buy real estate. So my wife and I had acquired a number of small properties locally, but then what I found is my wife is very hands-on. She's very frugal. She likes to go and do the move-ins, the move-outs, the cleans. If the toilet's broken, she wants to go fix the toilet. So that was fun in the beginning, but that gets kind of old fast. If your Saturdays spent, changing out washers and dryers and unplugging toilets, it's really a bit of a downer, right?
Yeah.
So then I started looking at a different vehicle that would be the most hands-off form of real estate. From the Rich Dad, Poor Dad angle, they don't really have a big, they're not really big fans of single family homes. They're more seem to be directed for multifamily. So for a lot of years, I was looking at potentially how I would get into a big apartment building, but then that seemed kind of daunting because I wanted it out of our area. So basically, that it would be forced to be a hands-off investment, like I intended real estate to be. And then the idea of having move-ins and moves out on 50 different units, that became a little bit daunting. So that then led me to the triple net arena, where the thought of just buying a big box and being able to get good financing on it, the downside being that typically the average down payment on a triple net from what I was looking at was about 30 to 35%. So a considerable amount of money. And then they will only guarantee that loan, or you can only lock that loan in for 5, 7, maximum 10 years. So then when I started to think about it and weigh the risks, the rewards, what you're talking about, are there are they overbuilt at the end of that lease period? I'm then negotiating with a large company that I am just a fly on the wall to. They'll squash me like a bug if they want, or squeeze me or break me down. And that just didn't seem like, the safety factor wasn't there. And then I told you that I heard you on the George Gammon podcast, and you were kind of expounding on the single family investment. And I started to relook at that in a completely different light. And I realized that was the best, safest place to park money of any place in real estate. And the idea that I used to have this thing that if you have a single family house, someone moves out, you're 100% vacant. But if you own 100 of them, it's so different than owning a 100-unit apartment building. And when someone lives in an apartment building, they're always waiting for the next step to be able to get that house. And because I think America's becoming a nation of renters,
right,
they're going to be moving towards a rental house. And there's more time-tested asset. You said again and again in real estate. And so I ended up purchasing. I talked to the wife about dipping my feet in the pool, and we would just buy one property with you. And I started talking to Evan, my investment counselor, and one turned into 5, turned into 6, which turned into 11, which turned into 15. So
I love it. I'm doing sound effects for that. So you were just going to buy one of our single family homes through our network, and you decided to buy 11. That's great.
Well, yeah, because, I told my wife, I said, one is not going to move the needle for us. Right. Because another big thing was when I realized that you could also do cost segregations on these properties. I looked at my tax situation and realized that in order to basically offset income, I needed to buy a certain amount of properties, certain amount of value, and that's where we ended up at the number that we ended up at.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. That's great. And I'm really glad you didn't pursue the triple net stuff and you went with the single family homes instead, because, it's very hard to disrupt the housing market. First off, as you know, being involved with the construction industry, and we're going to talk about something you said to me before we started about the cost and the regulations and so forth. But, it's very hard to make new cheap product, which would disrupt the investment, right? And it's very hard to build. That's a disruptor. Nobody is outsourcing housing. They're outsourcing retail. They're outsourcing office space. They're outsourcing manufacturing. But you can't outsource housing. It needs to be where it is. And there's a huge shortage of it. So I think you made a very, very good decision. And I'm glad you made that decision to do the simple, proven, humble, but very profitable single family homes. And that is the best thing going, if you ask me.
And another thing I was going to point out, by the time that I had identified these properties, and I'm buying all new construction properties, just as a side note, it's just the direction I want to go in. I'd like the least amount of problems possible. So I figured that buying brand new, you can't go wrong with that. Also, it helps on the cost segregation end of things, I think, to buy a newer property. But the market is so strong and so crazy. I mean, those properties all approved by the time that I had bought them at, say, $218,000 to the time that I got loans on them, they were all worth $240,000. Mm-hmm. So it's just, you're seeing all this money printing show up in hard assets.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's absolutely amazing. And it's a good time to be long on hard assets, especially income property. It's interesting through all of this, Chad, gold, I mean, everybody's talking about it, but it just hasn't been like anything that impressive. And you can't leverage it. You can't rent it out. It doesn't produce income. It has terrible tax treatment. It's just, and now it's got a big competitor, which is cryptocurrencies. And, those are so speculative and volatile. Yes, there have been some big moves and some people have made money, but remember, the other side of all those people that made money are people that lost money. So, there's a counterparty in every one of those upswings. Okay.
Definitely. I'm a gold investor too. I keep a small part of my portfolio in gold, and that was just from the preachings of Robert Kiyosaki, but it hasn't really reacted the way that other hard assets have, and I'm not too sure if that's manipulation or that could be a conversation for a completely different show. But yeah. I've been disappointed with gold. I thought it was going to break through 2,000 and go to the moon, and that never happened.
There are those very logical arguments for it, but they just never seem to really happen. The only time that really ever happened was in the 70s. I mean, it had a run in the last decade, but again, it frankly wasn't that significant compared to what happened in the 70s. And the fact that you can't leverage it, doesn't have the good tax treatment, can't rent it out, doesn't produce income, et cetera. It's just, and it is manipulated. I would encourage anybody listening who wants to know about gold manipulation and other precious metals price manipulation to check out GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. And, they are the ones pursuing this, but they're not going to stop it. It's just... Yeah, it's too big for any of us to do. But the one thing we can do is income property.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the other thing that I like about it is it's so scalable based on whatever situation you find yourself in. I mean, your properties that I was looking at in Memphis, although they're not new properties, they're decent. They've got a roof over their head. They cash flow. They're $80,000. Mm-hmm. And you can get into one of those for 20% down, $16,000. I mean, anybody that has a decent paying job can save $16,000. It's not, the barrier to entry isn't like you need $1.5 million to get into a Walgreens or something. So it's
right.
It's scalable for anybody, no matter where you're at, I feel like in your investing career.
I agree. Or you can ramp it up. Like we've got one client who closed on a big portfolio last week, and he wants to have 500 units. So, he's on his way. He's doing big stuff, and it's really fun to see these people grow. What kind of goals do you have with it? I mean, you're up to the 11 properties now, plus you probably have your own home. Anything else?
Well, I mean, I have an overall portfolio right now that's worth about $12 million. My complete portfolio, I've got some different properties. I've got a big commercial property. I've got a VRBO property in Hawaii that I literally think I just sold before we got on the air here that I got rid of just because I was listening to you. I'm thinking this thing's worth about as much as it's going to be worth. And the VRBO market has dropped off. Everyone's cutting each other's throats to get those things rented now. And I've got equity tied up that could go somewhere else. So my goals are always changing too, right? If you want to get to 10, that was my first goal, to get to a $10 million portfolio. I got there. And then the next goal for me is a $20 million portfolio. And I think I can get there with just continuing to add single family homes, to what I already have.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. That's awesome. So you wanted to talk about cost segregation, I think, a little bit. Oh, but before we do that, actually, Chad, which markets are you in? Which markets did you buy in?
So I'm in Memphis. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. And
good choice.
I'm in 3 different places in Florida. I'm in Ocala, North Port, and then Port Charlotte.
Okay, good stuff. So you got the Florida market covered, got Alabama, so you got the commercialization of space working for you, and Memphis, which is just great cash cow logistics. So you've got a nice variety there. Now, don't over diversify, okay?
No, I think I'm pretty good with those markets. I picked Memphis just because the cash on cash return was higher. The appreciation isn't really there. Huntsville, I feel like it's a little bit of both, and I think Florida overall probably has the over the long haul is probably the highest potential to appreciate. That's just my own personal opinion, just based on supply and demand. But either which way, I bought them, not for appreciation, I bought them for cash flow. They're all rented, as soon as they're built, within a week or 10 days, they will have tenants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Good stuff. So I would encourage you to kind of double down in those markets for the new ones that you buy for your next round, and just get more in those same markets for ease of management, because you've got some decent diversification already. So cost segregation, what questions or thoughts did you have about that?
Well, I know for me, I bought these properties in part because of the cost segregation with the Trump tax cuts, which I think are sunsetting, if I'm not mistaken, on the bonus depreciation. So I took that as an opportunity to buy things I was already going to buy and then get, tax incentives to do so. But I'm curious on your thoughts on why someone wouldn't do a cost segregation on property. I know why I would. I'm just curious if you have a counter to that.
Yeah. So first off, just for those who don't know, income property is the most tax favored asset in America because you can depreciate it. And depreciation is a good thing. This is in a good way, meaning you get to take a non-cash deduction or a phantom deduction, as I sometimes refer to it, where you're not paying for the deduction. You're not writing a check to take a tax deduction like if you donated to charity or spent money on your business. So it's a really fantastic tax benefit, depreciation. And you can depreciate a residential property over 27.5 years and a commercial property over 39 years. So that's another advantage, by the way, of residential. You get faster depreciation, meaning more tax benefits. Yeah. But what you can do is you can take some of the components of these properties and you can itemize them specifically because they have accelerated depreciation. For example, appliances in the house or the HVAC unit or other certain components of the house, the air conditioner is the HVAC or the furnace, those depreciate at a faster rate. And so you can itemize these items and you can depreciate them over, say, 5 years or 7 years, right? And you get a CPA usually to do your cost segregation analysis, or it's also called cost seg for short. Okay. And so they'll charge you a little bit of money. And on a single family home, you can get this done now more and more. It used to be cost prohibitive on a single family home, but nowadays you can get this done for usually between $500 and $1,000 per property. And it will usually save you a lot more than it costs you because you can depreciate these things faster, take faster deductions. So that's a long explanation, but the reason you wouldn't want to do it is I can't really think of too many reasons not to do it. I guess, Chad, the expense, you're going to have to pay a little bit of money for the cost seg report. Okay, so that you can do it. And that's going to cost you $500 to $1,000 per house. And then also, all you're really doing with the cost seg is you're just bringing the future closer to you. And so you are getting the advantage of the time value of money because I'd rather have a tax deduction today than later, right? So that's good. But you're not changing the tax deal overall. You're just accelerating it. Okay. So, I guess from that component, it's not like a grand slam home run, but I think it is a good deal and I think it's good to do. I can't think of too many reasons not to do it. It takes a little bit of work, a little bit of time, but, also keep in mind with everything that you do, there's not just the economic component. You do learn something from doing it, right? So just by doing these cost seg analysis and reading the report after you get it back from the CPA, you're going to learn something about it. And that'll be, in education, right? But you only need to do a couple of them to learn something, right? You don't need to do, if you have 30 houses in your portfolio, you don't need to do 30 of them, right? No, but you might want to economically. So yeah, that would be my answer. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, it makes all sense for me to do them, but some people, I guess, and then if you sell the property, you have to recapture the gain. So it is kicking the can down the road a little bit, right?
Right. But if you do a 1031 exchange, you bury that recapture into the exchange. So you don't recapture.
That was something I was worried about. If you sold it and in 1031, you don't have to do the recapture.
No, because the recapture is buried into the exchange calculation. And so it just keeps going over to the next property and the next property. And you can do that your whole life. And then when you die under current law, the basis steps up to market value for your heirs. Now, again, we always need to make the disclaimer, we're not lawyers, we're not tax experts, consult the appropriate professional. Disclaimer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there you go.
Biden is going to eliminate the 1031 exchange. What kind of rules do you think are going to affect real estate for the new tax administration?
Good question. We have talked about that on the show. You probably heard us talk about that on the podcast. And it's a possibility. There is some talk of it. But, housing and real estate are just kind of this like sacred cow. And it's very hard to get away with doing anything to hurt real estate because, first off, it affects like everybody. It's not this fringe element that's not going to screw up your political career, right? It's just like everybody's in real estate in one way or another, right? Yeah. And so it has such like wide-ranging effects, and there's so many people lobbying against any of this that I don't know. Even if he wants to, he'd probably be hard pressed to make it happen. Go ahead if you had something on the tip of your tongue, but I want to ask you about construction cost, because you said something about
what I was going to get into next. Was just, we were talking before we got on a recording here about, you asked me about how Seattle's market was. And I noticed a spike of new apartment projects coming in, to get bids on. And I kind of asked around to a developer friend of mine, and I said, is there, what's going on? And he said, apparently there's a new energy code coming in, Green New Deal stuff, where the cost to develop your average apartment building is going to go up something astronomical. So everyone was just racing to try and get their permits in so that they can build before they have to, comply with the new energy code permit. So that's just going to make, they try to make more affordable housing and do anything that the government tries to do, they just end up screwing up because no one's going to be able to afford to build these things or buy them or live in them or whatever the case may be. So that's basically the big thing I see going on in my market is just an influx of people trying to get permits before they have to acquiesce to this new energy code.
Yeah, the government, they have created the homelessness problem, not only by shipping the jobs overseas and, not helping the veterans enough and all of this, but by all of these regulations on housing. They've just made it so expensive to comply with the requirements, and especially in places like Seattle and California. I'm talking about Seattle like it's a state. It's obviously just a city, but it's run like its own little fiefdom. And so it's just, they're just making it so hard. They can't deliver low-cost housing anymore. You just can't do it.
No, and one interesting thing about low-cost housing is it's always built by the government. And if you actually look, when you go to apply to do that job, we're a non-union company, right? So when we go to do one of these low-cost housing projects, we have to pay prevailing wage. So everyone gets paid a set amount of money. It's the highest wage bar that they have. So when you look at the cost to build what they call quote unquote affordable housing in the government run sector, the private sector could have built it for about half as much if they were actually, if they let it to the free market. So, I'm a free market guy, and I just don't understand anything the government touches, they just destroy it. And I don't know how many more times you need to prove that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, we need a government to do a few things, but let's just keep it to a minimum because, it's like Reagan said, the most dangerous words are, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Absolutely. Run for the hills. Yeah, absolutely. It's just the nature of the beast. It really is. But what you were saying, I don't know if that point was totally clear, Chad, is that you're seeing this boom in construction because all of these developers are rushing to build before they have to comply with these new requirements coming down the pike that'll make their cost of construction like 30% higher. So see how that's distorting the market? It's causing overbuilding right now in these apartments, right?
Yeah.
And then later it will cause a shortage of supply because no one will want to build.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, these people are all racing to get their permits. They're not even going to break ground yet. They just have to get their permit. And then I think they've got 18 months from permit to actually start digging a hole in the ground, whatever the case may be. But there's definitely things coming down that are going to distort the market.
Yeah, it just it doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. But hey, I appreciate you sharing your story. And is there anything else we should talk about? Questions, thoughts, goals, ideas, anything you want to run by the audience?
No, I think I just wanted to share my experience that, it's from someone that's looked at all different angles of real estate, totally bypassing single family and coming right back around to that being the best place to park your money, and you guys being probably the best company to deal with, in order to make that happen. So I just want to share my story and thank you for the service that you're putting out there for people and the education that you have on your website and your podcasts, and just a thank you from me.
Hey, well, thank you for your business. We really appreciate it. And it's an honor to serve you and other clients like you. And we just wish you super, super success, Chad, and happy investing. And thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.